Hey guys, so welcome to the very first episode of Bedtime with Jasmine. So I figured I would start a whole sub channel, basically still gonna be on our main channel, but a whole playlist of story times with me. And I figured bedtime is the best time because, as you know, I am a mom. I do have a baby, and this time he is asleep, so I should be able to get more done. Never fear, I have on my pajamas under this, so I'm not naked. It's not that kind of party, okay? But yeah, so let's get into today's story. I wanted to share basically my birth story. I wanted to explain how my pregnancy went. So yeah, a lot of people don't know this story, so I figured it's time to share it. So let's start with my pregnancy. So when I was pregnant, it was actually really easy. It was an easy pregnancy. I didn't start showing until about 5 or 6 months into the pregnancy. Really more around 5. It was around 5 months. I had a small belly. And then by 6 months, I felt like I was huge, but I really wasn't that big. But I just felt huge. So yeah, the story really starts to pick up around let's say November. Yeah, November is when the story starts to pick up, and my due date is February 22nd. So the end of February is the beginning of November. And at this point, I had just switched from my primary doctor, a regular doctor, and I wanted to start going to a birth center. So I wanted to have a natural birth, and I started going to this birth center. And at this point now I have an on-call midwife. So all that is really important for later on, but that's about it. So it all started in November. It might have been around mid to end of November. And basically we were out buying a couch for the house because we had just moved here to our townhouse. And I just remember I got there fine. I got there to the couch selling place, the furniture store, and I was feeling just fine on the way there. But then once I got there, I just started having some pretty intense pain in my back. I was just uncomfortable. I just wanted to be bent over. I was oh gosh, uncomfortable, but I'm kind of trying to play it off. I'm trying to focus on getting this couch. I'm not too worried about anything else. I just want to focus on getting the couch. So we go through the whole thing, you have signs, paperwork, whatever, get the couch. And we go to get a U-Haul to bring the couch home. And at the U-Haul place, I'm just I can't do it. I'm in so much pain. I don't know what to do. What is going on? But it's not any type of uterine pain or pain down there. It was just my back, just my lower back. And I'm oh my gosh, I don't know what is going on. So sitting upright in the car was so uncomfortable. Talking to Ken, my fiance, and I'm just baby, I can't do this. This is too much. So we go get the couch. We're putting it in there. I'm freaking out. I'm something's wrong. I call my midwives, and no, I hadn't called them yet. Well, put a pin in that. So I'm telling Bear, something's wrong. I don't know what to do though. I'm just kind of in pain, but I don't know what this pain is. And so we just kind of go home, chill, let me lay down and relax and not move around so much. And I'm just kind of get in a comfortable position. So that night I try to go to sleep. I cannot sleep. I'm so uncomfortable. It's just too much pain in my back. So it's maybe 3 a.m. and I look and I feel I've passed my mucus plug, but I think I was 28 weeks at the time. Yeah, I was 28 weeks that day. So I'm it's too soon to have this baby. I don't think it can't be my mucus plug. So I go to the midwives. I call my midwife, and she's just no, it's not your mucus plug. I'm sure it's not. It's way too early. You're just having some back pain because you're so small and petite, and the baby is probably putting a lot of pressure on your back So I'm like, okay, like that's what she says, I'm okay, whatever. So I just suffer through the night, and I pretty much start calling my midwives pretty often, telling them about my complaints, and at my next appointment I tell them what's going on. And my midwife tells me, this is probably this is my second appointment with them ever. So she's just like, you know what, like the baby is just sitting kind of crazy in your stomach, it looks a little bit weird, maybe you're having some contractions maybe, but I don't think so. I think it's just the baby is sitting weird, and you're just so small that it's putting a lot of pressure on your back. Maybe go to a chiropractor. So I go to the chiropractor, they give me an adjustment, they tell me, wow, like your back's really messed up, everything's just kind of thrown off from the baby, so you need like, goodness, thousands of dollars worth of adjustments. And I'm just like, I'm good, I'm not going to do that. So fast forward, it is Christmas, my family is visiting us because they didn't want me to go there being so far along in my pregnancy. So they're here visiting us and everything's good. But literally the day they arrived, I noticed that I had swelling, but only in one leg. So the swelling stayed the whole time they were there, and it was just in this one leg, my right leg, and that's it, nothing else. I mean, still kind of dealing with some back pain, like my back is definitely still uncomfortable, but at this point I have been dealing with it for like a month now, so it's just like, what do you do? So yeah, so now I'm dealing with this swelling, and I notice it's a little bit weird. So I call my midwife, and she's like, you know what, that sounds weird. You can come in, but I think it's just because you're, farther along in your pregnancy. At this time, I am 31 weeks. So she's like, well, I mean, it's just because you're farther along in your pregnancy, like, swelling's normal, just keep an eye on it. I'm like, okay, cool. So it's the day that my parents are leaving. They were here for a week, and I'm just not feeling well. I feel like I'm sick. It's now it's December 28th. It's December 28th, and it's just like, oh, okay, like maybe I caught a cold. So I lay down, and I'm just like, I'll just sleep it off, like it's nothing big. But then I take my temperature, and it's 100 degrees, and I'm like, okay. So my parents are leaving. They're going back 9 hours to my hometown in Maryland. And I just remember calling my fiance because he was saying goodbye to his family, and I'm like, babe, like I have a fever, I think maybe I need to go to the doctors. I just want to make sure I don't have the flu or anything, because when you're pregnant, the last thing you want is the flu. And this is pre-coronavirus, so I didn't know coronavirus existed. I'm not thinking about any coronavirus. So I call my midwife. She's like, yeah, definitely go to urgent care, and just make sure that you don't have the flu for the sake of the baby. So we go, and as soon as we pull up to the urgent care, my nose starts bleeding, and I'm like, that is so weird. Like, my nose hasn't bled in years, and it's the first time my nose has ever bled. But I'm like, okay, whatever. So we sit in the car, we handle my nose, and we go in, and they give me a flu test, and I mentioned to them that my nose had bled, and they take my blood pressure and like all the other standard stuff that you do when you first go to an urgent care. And the nurse comes back, and she's like, well, good thing is like you don't have any type of flu or anything, and your temperature is not there. Like, you don't have a temperature anymore, which is crazy, because like 2 hours before that I did, but I did take some Tylenol, so maybe that's why my fever broke. But nonetheless, yeah, so they take my temperature, and she just tells me the doctor's gonna come in and talk to me, and so she does. And a doctor comes in, and she's like, hey, so I heard you had some swelling, can I see it? So I show her my leg and around my ankle. She's like, yeah, that's pretty swollen, and I noticed when you came in that your blood pressure is a little bit elevated, and just with the swelling and the blood pressure, I'm a little bit concerned, so I would like you to go to the hospital if you can, just to get checked out to make sure there's no blood clots or anything going on. I'm like, okay. So I call my midwife, and she tells me what hospital that they are at, like that they practice at, so to come in. And so I'm like, okay, cool. So me and my fiance start talking about like what we're gonna do for dinner when we get home, like we're chilling. I arrived to the hospital. There is somebody already waiting on me with the wheelchair, and they offer to wheel me, and I'm like, sure, okay. And they take me to labor and delivery, and I'm like, well, that makes sense because I'm pregnant, so I need to go to labor and delivery because that's where like the doctors are that would be able to help me in terms of like an OB and all that. So we go up there, and I'm in a triage room, but it's a pretty nice room. And she takes my blood pressure. She really doesn't say anything. And then she leaves and comes back. And then she's like, okay, so we're going to start you on an IV. And I'm like, okay, like, still not thinking much of it. And she says, so what hand do you want it in? And I'm like, in my hand, like, we're not going to put it in my arm. She said, oh, no, when you have a long-term IV, we usually like to just put it in your hand because you move so much. And I said, long-term? I'm not going home. She said, oh, you're definitely not going home. Your blood pressure is through the roof. And I'm like, what do you mean? She said, yeah, your blood pressure is sky high with that swelling and everything. You're not going home. Not tonight, at least, like maybe tomorrow. And I'm like, okay. And it's Saturday. My parents literally just left a few hours ago. They're still on the road to Maryland. And now I'm in the hospital, and they're telling me I can't leave at least until Sunday. And then even then they're saying probably more like Monday, just because they usually don't do discharges on Sundays. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So in my head, everything's still fine. I'm not stressing at all. I'm thinking I'm leaving. So they moved me to a room, and I get a new set of nurses, which were awesome. They were so sweet. My nurses were super good. And they start me on magnesium. They're telling me I'm gonna need a catheter, and I'm like, I don't need a catheter. Like, they're like, okay, well, she can walk. She's pretty good at walking. So they just give me like a bedpan that's next to my bed, and then like I have the option to go into the bathroom. They would prefer me to use the bedpan, but I did not use it. I just went to the bathroom. So that was the first day. And then on Sunday, next thing I know, this is where everything gets crazy. Like, I have nurses coming and telling me that emergency medicine is going to speak with me. The nurse basically tells me I have to get this catheter put in. They're watching everything. They're telling me that my blood pressure is too high, even on the magnesium. Like, I'm getting blood pressure medication orally as well as being on magnesium. No, I might not have done them both at the same time, but I really can't remember, so don't quote me on that. If you're a nurse, you know whether I did or didn't. I really can't remember, because this is when things get a little bit hazy here, because this is like first whole day of being on magnesium, because we went late at night on Saturday and now it's Sunday. Emergency medicine's basically telling me I cannot leave the hospital until I have this baby. I am at this point now, as of that Saturday, 32 weeks. So I'm just like, well, I'm not due for another 2 months. And they're like, well, then you'll be here for 2 months. And I'm like, okay. Like, I was really upset. I did not want to be there. And I'm telling them, well, I was signed up to have a natural birth. And they're like, no, baby, like, that's not gonna happen. You'll be lucky to not have a C-section at this point in time, but we can't even say that you probably won't have a C-section. So at this point now, I have an anesthesiologist coming in every day. I have a surgical tech coming in every day. I am seeing emergency medicine and a regular OB, and it was just a mess. I really don't remember anything from Sunday to about Tuesday or Wednesday. At this point, they are giving me magnesium, so much of it all day, every day, and I just got so tired. And I had a catheter in at this point in time. So I think I pretty much just slept through most of these days. But by Wednesday, they had pulled my catheter and they had stopped the magnesium, and I'm just taking oral blood pressure medication. But my blood pressure is still not dropping. It's still not being managed. And at this point in time, my swelling is so bad. It's now in both legs. It's so big. My legs were so fat. My feet were so fat. My hands were starting to get fat. It was just ridiculous. But I feel overall fine. Not once did I ever feel sick again since Saturday morning. So like since I've been to the hospital, I did not feel sick at all. Since I went to, even before I went to urgent care, I wasn't feeling bad anymore. Like I'm feeling fine, but they're telling me all these things are going on, and they're giving me so many drugs, so many different things. I'm on an IV constantly. There's something dripping constantly. And at this point, I hadn't showered. I'm still in the same clothes from Saturday, because on Saturday when they gave me a gown, she told me, well, because I had a dress on, that I could just pull. I had a dress on, but like I was wearing a dress as a shirt. I had on pants, but you know, when you're pregnant, just things are more comfortable. So I had on a dress, but as a shirt. I had on pants, so I just took my pants off and I rolled the dress up because I thought I was going home. I ended up staying, and from that time on, I had been hooked up to everything, so I could not take off my clothes. So it's now Wednesday, and I'm requesting to have my clothes taken off. Can I take a shower? Can I brush my teeth? Can I do something? So finally, a nurse starts helping me with that, but I guess she started noticing that I'm contracting. And I know they had pointed it out before, but I guess now by Wednesday, they're just like, she's contracting too much. So at this point now, I've already had maybe 2 or 3 steroid shots injected for the baby's safety. And for me, all pretty much for the baby. They were all for me, but they were all for the baby. Like, they were injected to me for the baby for steroids to help get his lungs and stuff together. And I think maybe the first time was just to slow the contractions. But at this point, they're like, your contractions are too close. Are you feeling them? And I'm like, no, I'm not feeling any contractions. I'm not feeling anything. Like, what do you mean? And they're like, oh no, like, you're contracting a lot. So now I'm getting so many, like, I can't even tell you how many I had, but so many steroid shots, and they hurt so bad because they're going into your muscle. They're going in pretty deep. At this point, I already had so many in either butt cheek that they started putting them on my shoulders. Like, it hurt so bad, and I'm just miserable. I just remember on Thursday calling my mom, and I was crying because I'm like, they're saying I'm contracting. They're talking about I might be having this baby tomorrow. They're telling me all kinds of crazy things, and I just didn't know what to do. And at this point, my mother is back in Maryland. I'm in Georgia. Like, we're so far away from each other. My fiance has to work, so like, not that anybody left me alone, because his mom tried to visit and his cousin also visited, but I didn't want anybody to stay there all day. I'm there all day and nothing's happening in terms of having the baby, but I am sitting there a lot of the times just miserable and so upset because I had this perfect natural birth in this beautiful birthing center envisioned. I thought this was going to be an amazing experience. I had such an easy pregnancy. Like, this was supposed to be so nice, and I'm here in the hospital on so many drugs, getting so many shots, and being told that I'm going to have this baby super early. And just to prepare for that, they went from saying I'm going to have to stay there till I'm, you know, basically 38 weeks to 36 weeks, so let's hope we can get to 34 weeks. Now we are at 32 weeks, and they're preparing to have this baby the next day. And I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. Like, every single day, every hour, things are changing. So at this point in time, I'm just overwhelmed. I'm over it. And I was just like, I just want to have this baby. Like, I just want to have the baby. I can't be here anymore. I cannot physically tolerate another drug. I can't do this. Like, at this point, that's where my mind is at. I couldn't do it. And so we had one last ultrasound, and the ultrasound tech did mention that maybe something was off, but she said, like, he was just measuring small in his stomach area. At this time, we don't know the gender either. So she just said the baby's measuring small around his stomach area, and it's probably nothing. It's probably just because he's moving so much. And a radiologist checks it and says, yeah, it's fine. He's normal. So here we are. Now we're on Friday. I've been there since Saturday. So day number 6 of our stay, and they're like, we want to start you on Pitocin to speed up this delivery. We've tried all the interventions we can to try to keep you pregnant longer, but this baby's coming. So they gave me Pitocin. They put me back on magnesium. They might have started my mag again. I'm not sure. I don't really remember. May or may not have done that. We'll just leave that to the doctors if that happened or not. But anyways, they start that. I have to get catheterized again. And they give me epidural because my blood pressure, but they're allowing me to attempt to at least try to push this baby out. So at this point in time, I'm now on epidural and I am hooked up to, I think, oh God, I'm not even gonna try. I'm hooked up to a lot of things, but I just know I have the epidural in, and they catheterize me, well, because I had the epidural, and they're preparing an OR for me if I need to have an emergency C-section, but they're allowing me to push. And I just remember being fine, not really feeling much, but the epidural hadn't really kicked in. I just kind of like, it felt like it was tingly. Like everything felt like it was trying to be numb, but it wasn't numb. I could still feel pretty much everything. But I didn't know how an epidural was supposed to feel, and I really was supposed to have a natural birth anyway, so I'm not thinking about this. I didn't say anything. I'm just like, oh, okay, like, I feel things, but cool. I don't know why I didn't think to say anything, but, like, I just thought maybe the epidural was going to take the edge off, not really numb you that well. So I'm like, okay, chilling. And then it hits me. And at this point in time, I had not felt any contractions. But, like, I tell you, when it's time, it is time. And you know, everybody will tell you otherwise, but you know when it is time, because I was sitting there and then I looked at my fiance and I was like, Ken, like, I need to have this baby right now. Like, I want to push now. And that's when those I wasn't feeling any contractions. No, at this point I'm feeling contractions, but they're like, no, you're only 7 centimeters, like, you're not there, you're not ready. Next thing I know, my midwife comes in, she's like, she's ready to push. I'm like, thank you, because I'm ready to push. I'm ready, like, right now. So we start, but I don't know what I'm doing, and I'll fast forward through this part because it's really just an hour and a half of pushing. But let's just summarize. I didn't know what I was doing. Obviously, not obviously, but at this point, I hadn't taken any classes. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm just, like, pushing, but just, like, like, okay. Like, pushing with my abs more so than anything. The doctor finally walks in, and they're asking how long I've been pushing, and she's like, if she can't go much longer, like, she needs to go to the OR. And then she just looked at me, and she wasn't playing, so shout out to Dr. Marks, you're amazing. She looked at me, and she said, sweetheart, what you're doing is not it. You need to push, like, you need to poop. So stop doing whatever you're doing. Like, it's not working. You need to push. And I needed somebody like that. Everybody was so nice and everybody was so great, but I needed to hear that. Like, I needed that push. And at this point in time now, too, I've also got my epidural. I'm not feeling nothing. I can't even feel my legs. I have people holding my legs for me. I don't feel any contraction. I don't feel nothing. But I know I need to push this baby out. So I don't want to go to that OR, so I pushed with everything in my life and soul, and thankfully my little baby came out. He was 3 pounds 1 ounce, super tiny, but that was my boy. So at this point in time, they take him. The NICU was already ready for him. They already had all the nurses, and my fiance goes with the baby to the NICU, and I stay behind to pass the placenta, which, again, nothing normal in this story. My placenta was not coming out, so I ended up actually having to go to the OR and being put under anesthesia. So I was asleep, and they had to remove my placenta surgically because it was so embedded in the wall that it could not come out. So yeah, but that literally was, to me, felt like 5 seconds. I went in and I woke up, and I'm like, wow, it's okay. So I come out and I think the world is just grand. I got my baby. My baby is doing fine. He's small, but he looks great. I hadn't seen him, though, really yet at this point in time. So I just wanted to see my baby, but I had to rest for a little bit after coming out of the OR. And then maybe I had him at, I think, 4 o'clock. And now it's maybe 10 or 11 p.m. at night. And they're finally letting me go to the NICU to see him. So I go see him. But like I said, I needed to get rest, so I see him for a little bit, and then I come right back to the room, and I wake up the next morning, spend some time with him, My family's here now, and everybody's trying to go see the baby in the NICU. And I just remember I saw the baby, and then I came back to the room, and I had noticed at one point in time when we were in the NICU that he had turned blue. But I was like, oh, okay, like he's just choking a little bit, and they were saying he has a lot of thick secretions, but he was just born, so they're just assuming that like he has thick secretions because he was just born, and he's still trying to cough up everything, and because he's such a preemie and so little, he's having a hard time. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense, but he did turn blue a little bit, and that freaked me out. But I left to go back to the room because I think I had to go pump and deal with, you know, paperwork and stuff. So my fiance and his cousin were with the baby, and I just remember he came back to the room, and I think somebody was speaking with me, so I was speaking to them, and then he asked everybody to leave the room. He wanted to speak with me alone. I'm like, okay, like it's weird, but okay, what's going on? And he just looks at me, he's like, so the doctor said that there's something wrong with Quincy. They tried to pass a feeding tube to try to get him feeding, and he threw it up right away. So they're going to have to do some tests, do some x-rays, and transfer him to Children's Hospital. And right as he's telling me, the doctor comes to the room, and he tells me that my son was born with his esophagus and his stomach not connected at all. Like there's just nothing in between. So it's just nothing, like there's nowhere to go for any food, saliva, anything. So that's why he's been struggling so much and why he's been spitting up everything. And I just remember like losing it. Like I didn't know what to say. It was the hardest thing to hear because everything had gone so well leading up to that point. Like my pregnancy was so easy, and then overnight it was like I'm in the hospital. I just spent a week in the hospital, and although the birth didn't go the way I wanted it to, once I had him, it just seemed like everything was perfect, and he was still perfect. And they're telling me this, and it's just sinking in that like my baby is gonna need so many surgeries, and he's not coming home soon at all. And if at this point I'm probably even wondering if my baby's gonna make it, because I had never heard of anybody being born with their esophagus and their stomach separated. So yeah, that was hard. Like we just broke down, and like of course like my parents have impeccable timing. They had, as soon as the doctor finished talking and he left, my parents came in the room, and so they just see me crying, and then for the first time ever I saw my fiance cry, and his mom cried. Everybody was just crying. Like it was so hard because it's our first kid, and you know we were so worried about him. But at this point, they were telling us Children's Hospital didn't have any space for him, so he would have to stay in their NICU until they could have space for him. And the next thing I know, we're getting a call, and they're saying they're sending an ambulance over right now. He's gonna be transported right now. So the hospital discharges me, and we all go. I was not ready to be discharged. I still was sky high on blood pressure, and of course now, with everything going on, I'm sure my blood pressure was not getting any better. I was so weak. Oh my gosh, it was the hardest thing I ever did. But I went in there, and I saw my baby in the incubator, and they're just telling me, they're explaining to me that they're gonna have to put a PICC line in. And yeah, this is the beginning of it's the end of this story, but the beginning of a 3-month journey in the NICU and a continuous journey now with my son. But yeah, I hate to put a pin in the story here, but it goes so much farther from here. But the moral of the story is you can never plan for how your pregnancy is gonna go. You can't there's no book, there is no class that is going to prepare you for your own experience, because every experience is going to be different. Definitely read as much as you can, go to as many classes as you can, learn as much as you can to be as prepared as you can be, but there's going to be nothing that prepares you. And I don't want this to be a sob story, because it's not. It's just part one of a 2-part story, and it gets better. It gets harder before it gets better, but it definitely gets better. So yeah, that is Bedtime Stories with Jasmine part 1. Thanks for joining us, and I'm gonna get emotional in like all of these videos, I'm sure, so ignore me. But yeah, have a great night, guys.